Sabina Matos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. Thank you to the members of the committee. Thank you for being here. As I have said before, local government and this committee is the one that keeps democracy alive, especially now more than ever when we really need to remind people the importance of democracy. As many of you have met before and know that I was in local government before being in the Providence State. I was in the Providence City Council before being appointed Lieutenant Governor. I have been in the office of Lieutenant Governor now for 5 years. It's an office that's very interesting. And now at 5 years, I can tell you a lot about the office. And I know many of you are very familiar with the office because Governor McKee, who was the past mayor here, was Lieutenant Governor. The office of Lieutenant Governor has a very interesting, unique position because the roles of the office has changed. Since early 2000, when the office of Lieutenant Governor was moved to be an independent office. Before that, the Lieutenant Governor used to be the president of the Senate, used to run the Senate. After the early 2000s, the office got moved to be independent from the Senate, from the House, and from the governor's office itself also. It's different challenge that brings that. I always said if I could change one thing, I would make it similar to Massachusetts, in which the governor and lieutenant governor run separate, but after the primary is over, they're married. For better or worse, the two are part of the same team. Here, the office is independent after the election, and this has brought a unique set of circumstances in which every lieutenant governor has added a little bit to the office of the things that they care about. The office does a lot of work with the Long-Term Care Coordinating Council, and I chair the meetings of the Long-Term Care. Other lieutenant governors have let someone else be the chair of the office, of the committee, but I got feedback from members of the committee when I got to be lieutenant governor, and many of them encouraged me to run the meetings and to be able to see a little bit closer what was happening in those committees. I've been sharing the meeting, and one thing that I discovered is that is a lot of good information that is shared on those meetings. And by the way, they're available online. You can join the meetings. Every month we have the links available. A lot of good information was being shared on those conversations about long-term care, about nursing homes, care for the elderly, care for individuals with disability, and a lot of resources that are available in the community, but all the information was staying there. So what I started doing is bringing the information and the resources to the communities. I was very intentional about starting with the communities that are away from the metro area, because every time I go to Westerly, Woonsocket, I always hear the same thing. No one comes here, we don't get any support, we don't get any information. So we started bringing the resources to the different communities. And just recently we were here, the senior center, and we were able to bring all those resources here, just where the community is, to have access to that information. And this work started when Richard Leach was Lieutenant Governor, that started this work. Then Lieutenant Governor Fogarty was very passionate about our veterans and working with our military families. To me, this is a work that I really love doing, because as someone who, again, appreciates so much the democracy that we have in this country, and coming here as an adult, 20 years old, not speaking the language, and being able to get an education and to be able to represent my community, first at the local government and now as Lieutenant Governor, I feel that those are unique things to this country, and I don't believe that my story could be possible if my family had decided to immigrate to a different country. There's so many good things about this country that sometimes we don't say it enough, and I think a lot of the good things that we have is thanks to the sacrifices of our military families and our military members who they raise their hand to 1% and says they volunteer to serve. And I believe that every time I get to work with them and work with their families, it's a way in which I'm saying thank you for your sacrifices, and we know what you go through if we want to support you. One of the works that we do that started with Lieutenant Governor Fogarty is sending packages to every member that is deployed during the holiday season to ensure that we remind them during the holidays that we're thinking of them, and we send them a package, we call it Operation Holiday Cheers, with coffee meal, their lemonades, anything that reminds us of Rhode Island, so they know that they're not forgotten during that time. So that's part of the work that the office does. I also share together with Director Pappas the Emergency Management Council, making sure that the state has a plan and responds in emergency. And we have been dealing, unfortunately, with emergencies recently, very unfortunate emergencies, the snowstorm plus the shooting. So making sure that there's a plan for the state and that every municipality has a plan. Because if the municipality doesn't have a plan, they will not get reimbursed by FEMA for the expenses that they have. That's part of the office. The office does a lot of work with the Small Business Advocacy Council, and I chair those meetings. And through the work with the small business, what I've been doing is I've been trying to attract new businesses to the state of Rhode Island. And I work trying to get more investors, especially from different communities. And I learned about this National Association of Supermarkets, and I worked with them. I told them to come to Rhode Island, and I told them about communities that were food deserts here in the state of Rhode Island, and that I wanted for them to open supermarkets in those communities. To my surprise, we were helping them find a location in Woonsocket to open a supermarket. And what we learned, something that I was not aware of, is that there is a practice that big grocery store has been using, and is that they, when they leave a location, they sell that property with a restricted covenant in there that doesn't allow for another supermarket to go in there. So we normally think that when there is a food desert, it's happening because of other reasons, but what we discovered is that greed of big corporation is a big part of the reasons why we have communities that don't have access to fresh food. When I discovered this, my team and I have been researching other locations throughout the state. Woonsocket is not the only place where there are buildings with restricted covenants. We also discovered that beyond the building where they were, what they do is they purchase the building around their store, and they sell those businesses with a restricted covenant to ensure that they don't get competition. And they dominate the market, and they can dictate the prices in that community. When they think that a community is not, they're not making enough money from that community, they say, we're gonna close the store, and then they sell the building with a restricted covenant, trying to force the residents of that community to go to the other store instead of allowing for another grocery store to open in there. So my team and I would introduce legislation. Again, we asked the General Assembly to introduce legislation on our behalf because the Lieutenant Governor is not part of the General Assembly anymore. And what we're looking for is to change that practice. So in the state of Rhode Island, moving forward, once that law is approved, no other grocery store is gonna be allowed to have a restricted covenant on a building moving forward. We're not going retroactive right now. I think that we have to look at how we can stop this bleeding right now, because a restricted covenant can last up to 30 years. That means up to 30 years, that building cannot have another grocery store there. And it's very particular because the real estate for grocery store requires specific needs. And if a supermarket has to go and start from zero to create to retrofit a supermarket like this happening, right now in Woonsocket actually, they're finally getting a supermarket, but they had to take an old Sears store and they have to do all the electric and all the plumbing that is very specific for supermarket. So it costs more money and it's making it harder for another grocery store to open there. Besides that bill, I also introduced a bill asking a practice that I learned at a meeting, a community meeting. Someone approached me and said, listen, every time I go to a grocery store and I'm trying to get a discount that they're promoting, I don't get it because I don't have a smartphone. I don't have a computer device, and this was a senior person, and she told me it's not fair. Before I used to get access to this discount, now I'm not able to. So this legislation that Representative Norette had already introduced a similar legislation. So when I learned about this, I approached him, so we collaborated in this legislation, making sure that we change this. If a grocery store is promoting a discount and make you walk through the door looking for that discount, they should honor that without asking you for a smartphone. Because not everybody has a smartphone, and if you have it, not everyone knows how to use it. I can tell you, my parents, they have a smartphone, and they don't know how to use the apps. And people that like them, in a fixed income, Social Security and disability, are the ones that need the discount the most. So I'm doing this work for what I call the grocery price, the fair price grocery agenda, to ensure that we address the prices of food in our community. And finally, the other work that I'm doing, I'm very excited about, is creating a center for employee ownership, because so many people are going to be retired within the next 15 years, and there's going to be a huge transfer of wealth happening in this state and in this nation. And I want to make sure that the employees have an opportunity to become owners of the places that they work for many years, because if the business doesn't have a succession plan, if they don't have a family member that's gonna take it over, they can just close the business down. Those individuals are gonna lose their jobs, and the state and the communities are gonna lose those taxes, plus the identity that that building has, that this community has been, this businesses have been already for that community. Have a legislation introduced right now to create the center, and also asking for a tax credit to help the businesses offset the expenses of becoming an employee owned. And honestly, we have good examples of successful employee ownership, like the Newport Restaurant Groups, and there are other, like the Stanley Tree Services also, and we want to encourage that more businesses become employee owned. So, the joke is people always says, like, what does the Lieutenant Governor do? There's a lot that the office does, honestly, and it keeps us always busy. And I'm so honored to have the opportunity to serve in this role. And I want to ask you for your support, in the support of your committee, so I can continue to do this work and see through, once the work to eliminate the restricted covenants in the food and supermarkets, and also making sure that we see this huge transfer of wealth happen going into more individuals, and I call it making capitalism work for more people. I'd be glad to answer your questions. I know you guys have had a long night. I'm glad to answer your questions. Yes?
Sure, so I've asked the other Lieutenant Governor candidates this question as well. So as a person who was and continues to be one of my grandfather's caregivers who is experiencing Alzheimer's and dementia, my mother moved him into her home for over a year, and caring for someone long-term in the home is not easy on anyone, but also the transition to memory care is not easy either. So I know you work with the Long-Term Care Council and chair that committee, as you said. What can we do to make things easier for people caring for their loved ones at home, but also when they have to make that difficult decision where it's just no longer feasible, what can we do to make the transition easier? I mean, we were lucky that my grandparents owned a home that could be sold and support his need to move into a memory care, which is not cheap.
Yeah.
But for people who are not in that position, what types of things can we do to make that transition easier as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we also have and it's available to join virtually also, the Alzheimer Committee, which used to be part of the long-term care and was established as a separate committee that does the work. Right now we're at this, actually, the association, the Alzheimer Association is advocating to create a position in the state of Rhode Island. Right now, we don't have a position in the state of Rhode Island to ensure that we have someone responsible for Alzheimer working in the state of Rhode Island. So I encourage, if you can testify and send an email to the General Assembly, that would be great. But that's the reason why I started bringing the information to the community, because at that, when I bring the resources to the community, we bring those resources. The Alzheimer Association is there with the information. The different departments from the state of Rhode Island in charge of long-term care, the Department of Health, the Department of Human Services, the Department of Hospitals also is there, bringing those resources right to the community. That's a very difficult transition. And we also put together, and we just put out the plan, the Alzheimer plan for the state for the next 5 years. And we're looking for feedback from the community. We'd love to connect with you to provide feedback to us based on your experience, what we can improve. When we announced the 5-year plan, I heard from so many individuals in the community that were facing similar situations. This is something that's affecting a lot of people, a lot of people.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thanks. Yeah.
Since you were talking about grocery stores, what are your thoughts about this incoming kind of threat of dynamic pricing as more stores, including just Walmart, said they were going to switch to these digital tags? I mean, you have AI on top of that. Do you think that there's more that can be done to protect people? I feel like recently I read an investigative article about one of the dollar stores, it might have been Dollar General, that was even like mispricing things. And so what more can we be doing to protect consumers, especially maybe people that aren't even aware of these digital risks going forward?
Dynamic pricing is a real problem. In my office, I've been doing a lot of research on this. Best way I can explain it is Uber, the Uber app, right? They use dynamic pricing all the time. I can tell you, I just went to a family wedding, and we were at the airport, my family and I. And at the time when we were calling for an Uber, they were asking for $150 for something that normally was like $35, right? So this is what they do. At the peak hour, they just raise the prices. So David in my office has been doing so much research about this area. In one of the reports that we read is that there was this supermarket that tests using the image, like reading your biometrics to determine the prices. And when Senator Warren sent a letter asking if they did this, they basically replied, we tried it and it was making the shelf too high. And that's why they were not using it. So what we have been uncovering in this topic is incredible. And there is so much work to be done in this area to protect consumers, because if we're not paying attention, they're gonna continue to use this tactic to drive prices. Depends on the demand. It also depends on who you are and your shopping habits. That's why they don't want to give you the discount unless you use the app, because they're more interested on capturing your information than honoring the discount that they promise. There's gonna be a lot of more work coming from my office in this area, so stay tuned. So, well, finally, I just wanted final thought about this grocery price agenda work. You have a one-stop and shop here, right? And they announced that they're gonna be closing some stores a couple years, I think a year and a half ago. If they close that location and they sell that building with a restricted covenant, you're not gonna have access to a grocery store in your community. We have been very proactive, reaching out to different independent grocery stores and let them know that because they already said they're gonna be closing a lot of stores, they should be planning on coming to Rhode Island. We have been speaking with supermarkets like Big Y, Wegman, and I have my team is proactively reaching out in order to make sure that we're able to have response in case they close those supermarkets in your community. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and again, I hope I can count on your support.